Welcome back to another episode for Juba Forensics PLC, the YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk through a couple different things, really your higher level management, your organizational culture, and how that relates to fraud. So a term that I've found recently that I really like when it comes to leadership, organizational culture, and fraud is trust but verify. I think that's a really short but sweet phrase that you can adopt within your organization that people are going to understand what that means. And I'm going to talk through why that's so important. So, trust but verify is when I say leadership and organizational culture, a lot of this has to come from the top down. And it's when I say come from the top down, your CEO can't say, hey, starting today, we're going to have a trust but verify culture and then walk away. That's not going to fix or change or do anything. But what is going to be helpful is if the upper level management actually adopts that mentality and they start asking questions. So they're not asking questions just to ask questions. They're not asking questions to try to catch employees in a lie. Like, that's not what this is. It's not that they think everybody's a criminal. Is they are asking questions to truly understand what it is that we're doing. Why are we doing it? Can we be doing it better? So not only does this relate to fraud, but this can relate to across the board so many things within an organization. There are so many times that I have heard that excuse with, well, we just always do it this way. That doesn't mean that's the best way to do anything. So I personally love to ask questions, yet again, not to accuse anybody of doing any wrongdoing, not to accuse anyone of anything really, but to get to the meat and potatoes and the why are we doing it this way? Why are we spinning our wheels over here when we could be doing it different or better somewhere else? So, upper management's perspective on fraud and finances is essential. How they think and view finances is going to trickle down to other people, not just finances, but fraud. If upper management doesn't think fraud's a concern and they don't want to know anything about finances, that is going to open up the doors for fraud across your organization. But if upper level management actually starts asking questions, why does it look like this? Why, when you compare this month to last month, are some of these numbers different? Why, when you compare this year to last year, are some of these numbers different? When upper level management starts to ask some of these questions where they're not accusing the employee of doing something wrong, but they're just trying to verify why the numbers maybe look the way they do. Why do we accept payments the way we do? Why do we run payroll the way we do? Not to overstep, not to step into someone else's lane, but just to genuinely understand how the organization works and how it can be made better in the future. Those are very important pieces. So being able to ask those questions without stepping on toes can be a fine line sometimes, but I think coming at it from a trust but verify place can make a difference. Employees will understand that if that's the phrase you're using with it. If you just all of a sudden go from not caring about fraud or finances or anything related to that, and then you step in 8 a.m. tomorrow morning and start ripping people to shreds and saying, why does this look like this? Why does that look like this? And you don't say, hey, we as an organization are trying to change and trying to become a trust but verify organization where we're going to ask questions, but the goal of the questions is to improve things and not to get anyone in trouble. If you don't have those conversations and you go from asking 0 questions to 1,000,000 questions, people are going to feel a little on edge, a little uneasy. And people are also going to maybe not want to answer your questions, also depending on how you phrase the questions and your tone of voice, the way you're asking them. You can ask the same question in an accusatory manner and a genuinely trying to understand kind of manner. So it's really important with how you go about approaching some of these questions, how you go about changing your culture if you don't normally ask questions. And I say top management needs to start doing some of this, but it can't just be the CEO only, because if you're a large company and it's the CEO or business owner only asking questions and no one else does, your lower level employee is probably not going to open up to the CEO. So eventually this has to trickle down to everybody's asking questions. And it's not just from the top down, but the top needs to implement the change to make it all the way down to the bottom. But then that trust but verify culture, all of your employees across the pyramid there, across the bottom, should be asking questions of each other. Hey, why does it look like this? Can you help me understand what's going on over here? And then it should also trickle up. If an employee sees something that looks a little weird, they should be able to go to their direct supervisor and say, hey, this looks a little weird. I don't really understand what's happening. Can you explain it to me? And let management explain it to that employee. Why is this so important? Not only so many reasons. Not only can this help you prevent fraud from happening in your organization, one of the biggest ways that fraud gets caught is employees whistleblowing. And if your employees are terrified to ask questions, or that's just not the culture, no one ever asks questions, they are less likely to report anything fishy than if your culture involves just asking questions, seeing what the answers are. So you want employees to feel comfortable enough, A, to ask questions, and then B, if the answer still sounds weird, to tell somebody or to do something about it, whatever that might be. So that's one reason why you want to adopt a culture like this one where it's okay to ask questions of each other, going up the chain and down the chain and across the chain. But also, you want that because it's going to help you not only prevent fraud, like I mentioned, and catch fraud. So it'll help prevent fraud because people know, hey, they're going to ask questions. If I try to hide this over here, someone's going to ask me something because that's what our culture is. So that's the prevention piece. But that it can also help with the detection piece. If an employee asks questions and doesn't love the answers, don't make sense, they can then report it. But it also can help you streamline and improve processes. And this way, when somebody says, oh, well, that's just how we've always done it, you can look at them and say, that's not how we operate anymore. Let's come up with a better way. And who knows where that can take your organization. Not only can that help, I mean, when you talk about streamlining and improving processes, that can cut back on costs, all different types of costs. That can cut back on waste. It can cut back on, and waste can be from a perspective of physical, tangible, printing too much paper, printing too many papers, things like that. But it can also be your inventory, waste in your inventory. It can be waste in employee man hours. Just by streamlining different processes across the board can cut back drastically on expenses. Asking questions with why is this our target market? Why are we targeting this segment of the market when most of our market share is actually over here? Asking those questions can also then generate you a bunch more revenue if the right people are asking the right questions across the board. So something to think about, not only from a fraud perspective, but from a just revenue business perspective as well. Asking questions, trust but verify as your motto. What can that change within your organization? Not only change the tone and the culture of your organization, but what can that do for your bottom line? What can that do for you to continue to grow as an organization and do really big things and make an amazing impact? So that is what I have today as to talking about a little bit of organizational culture, maybe adopting a new mindset of trust but verify, starting from the top down, and how that can prevent fraud, detect fraud, and add to your bottom line as well. Hopefully this was helpful and it gives you some food for thought, things you can work on within your own space and organization. And please feel free to like and share this. I'll catch you guys next time.